Looks like, yep, Devyn is on the play. Has no turn 1 Vial, no turn 1 Mother of Runes, just Plains.
I'm curious to see how the Death and Taxes does against more of a straight control deck. I understand this matchup against beatdown decks. You have, Stoneforge Mystic. You have Mother of Runes. Against some of the combo decks, you have a good litany of Hate Bears and various utility against what they're doing. I don't know so much about how it matches up against a deck that's just a lot of powerful cards trying to get to Jace with Sweepers and removal.
Yeah, I think that theoretically it's the kind of matchup where it's supposed to be a little good. It's got a lot of those same weapons Goblins has in those kind of fights, like Wasteland and Rashad and Port and Vial. But it doesn't have things like Ringleader to put you ahead on cards. It just has to rely on, something like Stoneforge Mystic, which is a really good threat, but not actual gonna, just bury the opponent regardless of what they're doing. So I don't actually know how much I like the matchup. I feel like I would rather have the Shardless Bug side.
I feel the same way. You see Devyn with the turn 2 Stoneforge Mystic finding Batterskull. Job is somewhat under the gun to find an answer to that.
Yeah, Batterskull can be very problematic for Shardless Bug decks to deal with, especially considering Stoneforge protects it from Liliana of the Veil, one of the ways to kill a large creature.
Outside of Abrupt Decay range, and it requires a lot of finagling to get around.
Yeah. Thoughtseize, an effective answer to Batterskull in this situation. Does Jonathan have one, though? Looks like he has a Brainstorm. Probably going to Brainstorm, hope he hits a Thoughtseize. Misty. Verdant. Deathred Shaman.
Deathred's not a horrible draw here, though.
No. It can let him catch back up. The Batterskull is obviously going to be a huge threat that comes into play really quickly, but the Deathred Shaman will let Jonathan also move into the later game a little faster, so it's less pressing to have to handle a 4/4 lifelinker immediately. Threatening a turn 3 Jace the Mind Sculptor is not the worst.
Let's see. Joe fetch with his Misty Rainforest. Finds looks like he's going for Tropical Island.
Interesting. Means he almost certainly has another black source already in his hand. We can safely say he kept one of his fetch lands anyway, probably, since it's playing a reasonably mana-hungry deck. But his deck obviously has a lot of uses for black mana between multiple black cards you can cast in a turn, like Baleful Strix, Deathred Shaman activations, and of course, Hymn to Torok.
And Liliana of the Veil.
Yes.
All very black demanding cards. As Joe finishes up his turn with the Deathred Shaman.
Devyn has Phyrexian Revoker. He could go ahead and drop that to turn off the Deathred Shaman, but I have a feeling he's going to Swords it instead and go for the Batterskull.
Well, the big question is whether or not he has a third land drop. If he does, then it's very easy to simply plow and use your Stoneforge Mystic, but
appears you're right, and Devyn is actually missing that third land, so he has to settle for just a Batterskull. That's all, just turn 3, Batterskull.
Yeah.
My heart weeps.
Feels like settling somehow.
Baleful Strix is actually a pretty good speed bump for a Batterskull.
Yeah, it gives Job time to find some of his answers, potentially. Cantrips, and the Death and Taxes deck is not going to blow you out of the water with speed. It's going to try to grind you down, play various utility effects, and make life tough on your permanents and on your mana. But Job's got time. I mean, he's not going to die in 2 turns. He's got
no one playing Mangara of Karandor is going for turn 4 kills, right? It might even just be the slowest creature deck in the format. It's certainly, I think, a slower deck than Maverick, which operates on a similar axis, but has access to things like Knight of the Reliquary to help you close things out much quicker. Jonathan hit a Wasteland in that Brainstorm. That's actually a pretty useful card here. Death and Taxes often operates by constricting the opponent's mana, but when they're mana screwed and don't have an Aether Vial, you can actually set them a ways back. They have many cards that are 2 and 3 mana in the deck. It just can't cast them.
Joe mulling over this Brainstorm. I think there is an argument to be made that Devyn should have considered using his Stoneforge Mystic on his own turn last turn. Some of these Shardless Bug decks, there's occasionally a Vendilion Click or 2 hanging out, and could have set Devyn pretty far back if his Stoneforge Mystic responded to it that way.
Yeah, it's a play that these players have become used to making against decks that they know run Stifle, but a lot of people see something like Creeping Tarbid, Tropical Island, Deathred Shaman, and assume it's Shardless Bug. which, you know, there are actually Delver decks that look like this too. We don't see them getting played very much anymore. Almost everyone's converted, but it would definitely not be unreasonable to have been caught in that situation.
So you see Job there firing off the Wasteland. Devyn electing not to sack the Horizon Canopy to draw a card and instead using the mana to activate his Stoneforge Mystic.
Yep. Jonathan goes ahead and tries to pass phases, forcing Devyn to go ahead and put the Batterskull into play. And now we'll see if Jonathan is going to continue with the Baleful Strix or not. If he does play the Baleful Strix, he'll basically be drawing all of the Brainstorm Chaff. He can still shuffle away one card by waiting a turn. He is going to go ahead and play the Strix, it looks like.
Job draws. And yeah, it looks like he has his Singleton Liliana in hand, so.
Well, he's beginning to assemble. Devyn, however, does have swords to move the Baleful Strix out of the path and get in with the 4/4. He's going to not do that, it looks like. He's just going to poke in with Stoneforge Mystic. Did he draw an Aether Vial this turn, or is he going to Swords the Deathrite Shaman?
Pretty attractive here to block, as what Job really wants to do is set up Liliana on an empty board.
Yep, and that's exactly the position Devyn's going to give him now. He trades the Stoneforge Mystic for Baleful Strix, seemingly a strong trade for him, as he has the Batterskull able to attack now, but Jonathan is drawn as one of Liliana the Veil. Not really that common a main deck card in Shardow's-Bug. I think it definitely gets played now and again, but most people have begun to move away from it.
Yep.
So Devyn probably just hoping to dodge here, and he's going to get punished.
I think it's a card that's definitely appropriate for slower, more creature-oriented, honest metagames, but it's possible Legacy's in a place right now that's just a little too fast to be messing around with a lot of main deck Liliana the Veils. But again, you have Brainstorm and Shuffle effects, and playing singletons with high upside, I think it's a good value proposition.
Yep. Liliana the Veil is also a pretty strong card against the Reanimator archetype, as peculiar as that seems. A deck that a lot of people think might start springing up in value now that Sneak and Show is top dog in Legacy.
Oh yeah, there were some discussions at breakfast today about dusting off the Entombs, I believe.
Oh yeah. Now, if people are trying to turn 2 and 3 Gristlebrand, why don't you just try and turn 1 and 2 Gristlebrand?
Right, it's way faster.
Yeah, seems way better. Devyn hits another basic land, ideal, keeps him from being threatened by Wasteland, and then has the Revoker. What will he name? The Liliana in play?
I think Job is strongly considering Force of Willing this. I think Job may want to just get ahead on the board against his land-light opponent.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he goes for it. Pitches Ancestral Vision. That was barely even a card in the first place.
Right.
It would have taken so many turns for Job to draw those 3 cards, and just getting the Liliana activations is probably worth more than that.
Job draws another Force of Will.
Yeah, it looks like he has Tarmogoyf, Shardless Agent, Land, Force of Will in his hand. Plays the land. Casts the Tarmogoyf. Looks like if he does this, then he has to hold or pitch. He has to either hold both cards and not use Liliana, or pitch the Force to Liliana, right?
I like pitching the Force here.
I like it too.
An Edict is worth more than that Force of Will at this point.
Especially against a mana-screwed opponent.
Yes.
If your opponent can only play 1 creature a turn, an effect that kills exactly 1 creature is, well, that's pretty much any creature.
I also really like Job leading here with Tarmogoyf instead of the Starless Agent, because so many of the cards he can potentially flip over are removal spells, or some of them are at least. So it's worth trying to sandbag the Starless Agent as long as possible until Devyn commits a creature to the table.
Yeah, Abrupt Decay is obviously the big offender there, but even something like Brainstorm, he might perhaps prefer to give himself 1 more shot to draw a fetch land to maximize its utility.
Phyrexian Revoker in play on Liliana.
Not a surprising choice. Looks like Job did draw a fetch land, I believe, this turn, and so that leaves him spinning the wheel. Reveals Brainstorm.
And he drew the fetch.
I'm a prophet.
Perfect.
Swords on Tarmogoyf in response. Devyn does not want a chance getting that countered.
Brainstorm resolves. Looks like there is an Ancestral, a Hymn, and some lands.
Yep. Nothing too exciting, but he will at least get to reset the top of the deck. I imagine he'll keep... Oh, I don't No, actually, it's kind of an interesting spot. He can keep fetch land him, go ahead and just him the opponent, sort of put the board to reasonably equivalent.
Yeah, I think with an opponent at 2 cards in hand and land light, so you know you're hitting spells, probably some pretty powerful action here. I would want to just fire off that him.
That's exactly what Jonathan's going to go ahead and do. Fetches up Bayou, and courtesy of the Creeping Tar Pit, he's actually got reasonable enough amount of aggression here because he can just get in for 3 while the Shardless Agent defends the Liliana. Or he can even begin the race happy to trade the Liliana away to the Revoker that's already killing it.
I think Job's going to hang back. I think his draws are just much more powerful in general at this point than Devyn's. The upside of finding a removal spell for that Revoker is so high that I just hang back.
Devyn draws a nice one. Flicker Wisp. Flicker Wisp will let him reset his Batterskull back into 4/4 lifelinking beater mode. Pretty big.
And, yep, Flyer is valuable here. Pretty awesome draw.
Yeah, the race just reversed completely against Jonathan.
Someone could really use their Pernicious Deed.
Yeah, the Singleton Pernicious Deed would be quite good right here. A Tarmogoyf would also be quite strong.
I mean, Job's got some time, granted, but he needs to find something at the minimum to come up the ground.
Yeah. He's got about 3 turns, depending on how Devyn decides to attack. If he decides to spend a little time removing that Liliana, that can buy Jonathan some time, but...
As you see an attack here.
I can't be sure that the Batterskull attacked. I think it did. Yep, okay.
Trading both his Creeping Tar Pit and his Shardless Agent for the Batterskull.
Yeah, and Devyn did send the Flicker Wisp at Liliana the Veil, not chancing, and then abrupt kick off the top, freeing it back up.
Ryan Delane to the main event stage, please. Ryan Delane.
Jonathan with the draw.
Jonathan now can actually defend himself on the ground, but he's still getting beat up in the air by Flicker Wisp. He'll need to find an answer to that.
6/7, pretty close to maxed out.
Yeah, very. Certainly bigger than any creature in the Death and Taxes deck. 3/1, that's about as big as they go.
2/2 double strike, possibly.
Yeah.
Devyn with a Caracas.
Caracas is a nice one here. It gives him the ability to infinitely chump block an attacker should Jonathan draw like another Tarmogoyf and start initiating a race.
And Devyn's also in the enviable spot of lands and spells both being good draws.
Yeah.
As a 5th land allows him to move the Batterskull onto his flyer.
Yeah, Batterskull into Flicker Wisp would be a sizable game and put Jonathan really, really far back. As is, he's sort of slipping as opposed to actually falling. Whew, another Revoker. We'll see. Looks like Jonathan's going to crack Marsh Flats in response to the Revoker being cast.
Jace the Mind Sculptor, the name from Devyn, which I like.
Yeah.
The only card that I could see myself naming over it is Pernicious Deed, but that's because I am working with information that Devyn does not have.
Yeah. There is a Singleton Pernicious Deed in Jonathan's deck, as we described, and it would be fantastic here. Should Jonathan end up casting it, I imagine Devyn will very carefully consider future Phyrexian Revokers. It's one of the few cards that can actually get him out of this spot at this point. His position is deteriorating quickly.
Batterskull moving on to the Flicker Wisp.
That is basically a 2-turn clock now because Devyn can overrun Jonathan's defenses with an alpha attack. Appears we may have a life total discrepancy or some sort. Yeah, they solve it.
Job Billy picked up another Tarmogoyf, and he'll pick him up. So, looked like they were at a pretty neutral board, and Devyn drew a Flicker Wisp, and the neutral board went from neutral to overwhelming in Devyn's favor.
Yeah, I'm going to go out on a limb and say that was one of the better Flicker Wisps I've seen in my life, for sure.
Yeah, that's high up there. That was really high up there. Anyhow, onto the sideboard. Devyn has a sideboard that has a Relic of Progenitus, 2 Oblivion Rings, 2 Aethersworn Candace, a Sunlance, 2 Wiltleaf Lieges, and Imazawa's Chiche, 2 Rest in Peace, a Spellskite, a Leanin Relic Warder, Petty Needle, and a Holy Light, which when I saw on this deck list while we were off air, I had to request what the card is. It is from the dark.
It is.
Back when the color pie was a little bit looser. And it is white and 2 colorless to give all non-white creatures -1/-1 to land turn.
Ah, see, it does it to not white creatures, so that makes it, it right in white's wheelhouse because they're very, all about the white guys.
So I would suspect this is an answer to the newly released commander card.
True Name Nemesis.
And it's also probably pretty powerful against elves as well.
Yeah, clearly any sort of pseudo-infest is going to be very good against the swarm combo deck like elves. And that's the kind of card a lot of people are using to solve True Name Nemesis now. I've seen people banding about a variety of answers for decks like Death and Taxes because they're actually pretty soft to it. You put a Jitte on a True Name Nemesis and most Mother of Runes decks are going to fall apart in a hurry. Moving over to Jonathan's sideboard, he has a much more conventional neg-1 to all creatures in his deck, Golgari Charm, which he'll almost certainly be bringing in this matchup. It kills Phyrexian Revoker, kills Thalia, it kills Mother of Runes, kills Flicker Wisp.
There's a lot of things that die.
Yeah.
A lot of things.
It's very handy.
Angara, Mind Sensor, Flicker
Mind Sensor's
Wisp,
a big one. You can kill a Mind Sensor when it's cast with
Revoker,
a fetch land.
Thalia, Mother of Runes. I mean, it's just a who's who of the Death and Taxes deck.
He's also got access to another Liliana of the Veil, whether he wants it or not. He also is playing one Master of the Wild Hunt. Jonathan likes these high-impact singletons.
Yeah, he's a big fan.
I imagine we'll definitely see that come in alongside the 2 Golgari Charms. The rest of his sideboard is 2 Hymn to Torok, 2 Mana Maze, 2 Nihil Spellbomb, a Flusterstorm, 2 Dismember, and 2 Thoughtseize. Picture probably one, if not both, of the Dismembers coming in. It's a pretty flexible card. I'd want to have access to it. And then the Thoughtseize is depending on how he wants to address Stoneforge Mystic and its ilk.
Yes, a pretty typical Job sideboard with a lot of utility and some high-impact singletons.
I know that Jonathan's been especially happy with his Mana Mazes, using them to dismantle Storm player after Storm player.
Yes. How many Storm players have been in the room?
I've seen a fair few. I have seen their table placements sliding, though. It does not seem to be a good room for Storm.
Los Angeles, in my experience, both playing these events and covering these events, pretty combo-heavy room. I played in the Open here last year. I played against Sneak and Show or some Show and Tell derivative, I think 3 times in the 8 Swiss rounds, or 9 Swiss rounds, or what have you. And the Legacy Open 2 years ago, I ran into Belcher, Enchantress, and one other Storm along my 9 rounds of playing. So Los Angeles is a very dedicated Legacy crowd, has a real Legacy scene, and I think I usually associate the more dedicated and involved scenes with having a higher combo presence.
Yeah, I think that's true. The players a lot of people talk about in the Legacy scene, a lot of them are known for the combo decks they play. You sit across those players and you just expect them to be on their deck of choice. Bryant Cook, for example, the Tess master. Anyone who sits across from Bryant Cook is always expecting Tess. I think that's a similar thing that kind of repeats itself. Even you yourself, you've got that Burn Sigma. That's pretty much a combo deck.
It's somewhere in between.
Yeah.
It's a Storm deck that you're piecing together through multiple turns.
Yeah, exactly. Ritual Lava Spike.
Right.
Looks like keeps from both players.
Very good start for Job, an Underground Scene, a Deathrite Shaman.
Yeah, I see an Abrupt Decay in his hand as well, a card he did not see last game, but one that will certainly be pretty handy.
An Aether Vial from Devyn.
Also a very good start from Devyn. Aether Vial enables a number of the deck's tricks. Obviously it slides creatures through counter magic, but not even that. It makes Flicker Wisp an actual trick instead of just a kind of awkward 3/1 flyer that can reset some stuff. You can use Aven Mind Sensor a little more efficiently, and of course it interfaces very favorably with Mangara of Krondor and Karakas to create a repeatable Vindicate.
So Job has just picked up his 1 copy of Pernicious Deed, so we're going to see if that's going to make any impact in this game.
I think it's safe to say it's going to make some kind of impact.
I suspect it's going to be very good for Joe, but we'll see how it plays out. I've been deeded myself in a tournament where I was playing Rug, and it was unpleasant.
Yeah, I imagine. Abrupt Decay on the Vial. Interesting, considering that Joe does have that Pernicious Deed, and Vial's the kind of card that will get swept up in it, sort of providing some card disadvantage. That's a problem I myself ran into against Pernicious Deed trying to play some Vile decks just this week.
Well, there's a possibility that you're somewhat constrained on mana at some point, or you don't want to play against the Vile because of, tricks that can happen at instant speed, and you don't need to squeeze out every ounce of value. You know what I mean? Like, let the game take a slow pacing, let Devyn commit to the board, and then you can deed away everything.
I agree, you don't need to. It looks like it's a decision that's going to pay off as Devyn kept one land Vile and is again constrained on mana. Peels out of it right quick, has a second Vile, has a second and third Vile actually, alongside a Horizon Canopy. Is he going to play both? Playing both is going to put him in a world of hurt against the Inevitable Deed.
Yeah, I think Devyn right now is so exposed to Jace that he has to cut Job off of mana if possible.
Yeah, he just has to hope that Jonathan doesn't have Jace or doesn't have land and Jace. So he swords the Deathred Shaman once again. Jonathan fetching immediately for a fourth land. I don't think he has a Jace, though. Is he just going to pound in with Creeping Tarpet this turn?
Maybe. I like getting frisky.
I love getting frisky. Creeping Tarpet is by far my favorite land to attack with in the history of Magic the Gathering. It's just delightful.
It's not a bad choice.
Can also respect, of course, Mishra's Factory and Mutavault. Those are my top three.
Factory is my number one.
Yeah, Factory is a sweet card, especially when you have two.
And beat you up.
There we go. On the 6-turn clock. Tap that Horizon Canopy a few more times.
Could be down all the
We're
way
going to
down
knock
to
a
5.
turn right off that.
Wasteland the draw for Devyn.
Well, our Creeping Tarpet days may be at an end.
All right, plan B.
This Death and Taxes deck is definitely making Jonathan sort of adapt on the fly. We saw it work out very favorably for Death and Taxes in Game 1, where Jonathan, seemed like he'd gotten himself into a pretty good spot, but once again, Devyn changed the rules with a Flicker Wisp, and here we see him doing the same. Thalia into Wasteland. Suddenly now, Jonathan's the one actually a little mana constrained.
I'm a little bit surprised that given Job's mana situation, that Devyn didn't want to try to go after his green source of mana rather than the Creeping Tarpet. Especially Devyn, I believe, still has another copy of Swords of Plowshares in his hand. But
yeah.
Or no, I'm sorry, I'm wrong. There's a Stoneforge Mystic, a Flicker Wisp, and another Vial. So that's reasonable.
Jonathan has a fetch land to give himself whatever he needs anyway, so it could not have been taken off of green mana. And the Vial ticks up to 2, and now things are going to get pretty interesting. Devyn can slide down Stoneforge Mystic in the end step. Thalia is clear to attack. He can potentially go into a Flicker Wisp on the next turn.
And Devyn has just picked up Rest in Peace, which is a good answer to Tarmogoyf. Not a ton else.
That is very true. Jonathan will probably be forced into casting this deed at some point. The awkward thing about Thalia, of course, is it's going to make it pretty hard to play in Pop Deed in the same turn. That appears to be, I think, the plan Job's on, though. He's getting as many lands as he can into play rather than sandbagging a land or two for a future Brainstorm.
Mm-hmm. And Job's in some trouble now because this Batter Skull that Devyn's going to get is going to be outside of his range with Pernicious Deed, at least, unless he's going to set up Pernicious Deed over multiple turns.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the boat he's stuck in anyway. The problem is that means he'll have to take a bunch of damage first.
Yes.
He'll have to take at least 4 more damage from the Thalia alongside the 4 from the Batter Skull, and Mystic could get in 2 theoretically, so that'll put Jonathan below 10. And the fetch lands will bring him closer to the 7 to 8 range, depending on how Devyn's playing things. And also keep in mind, Flicker Wisp can save stuff via Aether Vial from Pernicious Deed. So Jonathan, despite having drawn this very dominant card, might actually find himself just out of luck.
Devyn, I believe, is going to add another Vial to the board. Job also has Golgari Charm in his hand, so he can use the Golgari Charm to kill just Thalia if the mana matters in one turn.
Yep. He's going to probably hope to catch a little bit more than just Thalia. In fact, this turn, I imagine he's got to be pretty close to pulling the trigger on that Brainstorm he's been holding.
Yeah.
Yep, during the end step, that appears to be what he's doing.
A land, another land, and
Can't make out. Shardos Agent. Yep, that's the other card. Well, that's peculiarly less than great for a Brainstorm Shardos Agent interaction. His hand is not well set up to Shardos Agent for a lot of value. He can throw back his Golgari Charm and Shardos Agent into it, paying a mana, but not really sure if that's well, apparently that's what he's going to do. Or not. No?
It's tough. All the death and taxes, all the plays that Devyn's making here is making it really hard for Job to squeeze out maximum value. So you see Pernicious Deed hit the table.
And this is sort of a dare to Devyn as well. You know, I've got this deed. If you let me untap with it, your Batterskull is not going to make it.
Yeah.
So now Devyn probably won't play the Batterskull during the end step, seeing that, unless he's willing to go all in on Flicker Wisp, trading Flicker Wisp to keep his token. I feel like he's more likely to sit. Tough call, though.
Well, it's what else are you doing with your resources then if you're not just going to? I think Devyn's hand is fairly poorly set up to do much after this deed anyway, that I would err towards just being more all in on the Batterskull, I think.
Yeah, I think I like that too. It's not even that bad a spot for Devyn to be in. A Batterskull would end this game in 4 swings, effectively. You can count off a little bit of damage for the Thalia in these fetch lands. Jonathan's going to have to carefully. He has to fetch it at least once. So that's going to bring him down to 13. And if Devyn had put in the Batterskull, the Stoneforge Mystic would be knocking him down to 12, which is 1 less swing.
And Devyn's just picked up a Revoker, which means he might be playing potentially right into Job's Golgari Charm if he were to play that to try to cover against the Pernicious Deed.
It appears we missed a tick on the vial as well on Devyn's side. Not that it's going to matter too much since he didn't have a 1-drop, and he wouldn't want to be activating it in response to a Pernicious Deed anyway.
There's a lot of really annoying small things going on against the Death and Taxes deck, right? Like little tricks.
I think that's the idea.
Little tricks, little bits of utility, things that randomly shut off your cards, some mana denial elements. Job has just picked up Jace the Mind Sculptor.
Jace the Mind Sculptor is an interesting card here. I think he might just be stuck, though, popping the Pernicious Deed probably during Devyn's upkeep.
Job going through the permutations here. Not quite sure how he wants to navigate the situation. Very complicated. He wants to squeeze every ounce out of this deed, but he also needs to free up his mana to be doing other things, and he also wants to take only so many of these hits.
Yep. He's at 13, but every point counts. They give you 20 life for a reason.
Right. He's got fetch lands to deal with, and you had to imagine that at this point Devyn has a reasonable hand to fire back with. He has 5 cards in hand.
Yeah. Looks like Jonathan is going to take the 2 and fall to 11. And Devyn predictably passes turn, declining to put anything else on the board. And Jonathan will go ahead and pop the deed for 5. He does have to make it for 5 in order to ensure that the Stoneforge Mystic's Batterskull will die if Devyn decides to respond. And Devyn does not.
So this is a big sigh of relief for Job here, as he's going to be able to land Jace on a pretty empty board.
He can also Wasteland Devyn down to 2 mana, constrict things a little further for him.
Job cracking a fetch and falling to 10. And now Job, I believe, will attempt to land Jace now on this empty board. Jace resolves. Job brainstorms, and he's starting to take this game over. He's found Master of the Wilds, Ancestral Vision, and Charlotte's Agent, so a lot of gas. Setting up for an Ancestral next turn. Through a Charlotte's Agent, Jace on a neutral board. Plenty of removal spells in his hand. Commanding position.
Yeah, he tapped the Wasteland. It's kind of interesting. I feel like I would pretty happily waste that Caracas during
well, I think that
turn.
he wanted to leave himself with mana where he could cast Baleful Strix or Tarmogoyf if those were the draws off of Jace.
Sure, and I think that's reasonable, but he has so many lands that card coming down a turn later isn't going to be such a big deal. And there are so many cards in Devyn's deck that cost 3 mana that are actually good, and most of them are even good against Jace specifically, like Mirran Crusader, Flicker Wisp as a threat, even Mind Sensor as a flying threat, and Mangara of Karandor.
Stoneforge Mystic comes down, and we'll be finding, I assume at this point, yep, Umezawa's Jite. And any follow-up here. Is a Phyrexian Revoker.
I imagine it's going to name Jace the Mind Sculptor.
But as we know, Job is armed with his Golgari Charm, so.
Yep, he is locked and loaded, ready to go.
Ancestral takes down.
And there's that Master of the Wild Hunt.
A lot of Job's weird one-ofs are coming into play in this match.
Cast the Master. Just do it. Come
Just
on.
do it.
For me.
Like this we've seen before. No one's impressed.
Yeah,
you know?
whatever, man.
Whatever.
Draw your 3 cards.
Many of you guys came with a deck. Some of you guys have a deck. At least one of you thinks you have a deck.
Well, he did hit a land, so he can still cast the Master. He also has a handful of Shardless Agents. Play the land. Just play the Master.
Well, he has to concern himself with, how much does he care about getting a hit with Jit, basically? Getting hit by Jit once. The answer is probably very little, but
Yeah.
it's still worth figuring out.
Yeah, I don't think it's that big a deal, especially considering the Master can't die to the Jit, which is nice. However, maybe he's just gonna, roll the dice again.
We've come this far, right?
Nope. All right, Master of the Wild Hunt. I'm excited. I don't think I've seen anyone cast a Master of the Wild Hunt in Legacy before, and I feel like I'm the person who would have seen it
Yeah.
if it happened.
Do you think you're the only one who can have a lot of weird creatures and crappy little pieces of utility going on Death and Taxes
I'm
guy?
just saying I see
Master.
a lot of people. oh yeah.
Yeah. I can out weird you. I can out crappy you. Oh man, come on. Boo. Boo. Swords
Boo
to
this
plow.
man.
Swords to plowshares.
Yeah.
Really compelling.
More like Wolfpack to Plowshares. And Devyn will pass. He cannot go Jite equip this turn, obviously. So that gives Jonathan the ability to kind of defend himself from that. He has the Golgari Charm. If the Jite goes onto the Revoker, he can obviously just kill it before it would ever deal damage. And he can also neg one the 1/2 Stoneforge Mystic to prevent it from dealing damage, killing the Revoker as well. So there's really no good place to put that Jite right now.
Yep. Charlotte's Agent for Job. Abrupt Decay, an excellent pull here.
When it rains, it pours.
It pours.
That's going to turn the tide here. Jace comes back online. Job's hand already quite good, potentially good enough to win the game, and Jace going to make it even better.
Job uses Jace to brainstorm, and really in a commanding position here.
Still has that 3rd Shardless Agent too, right? We can just get a free spell if we wanted right here.
And a Dismember. Just this.
Yep, this is it. Just all these guys. Jonathan declined to attack with one of the Shardless Agents, no doubt remembering there was a Batterskull waiting in the wings. That decision certainly pays off. I'm curious how Devyn's going to play this turn, though. He's got a lot of options. He can go Jite equip on the Batterskull, try and grind out a really long game where he has to remake the Germ token. He can play the Rest in Peace. He can attack and then play the rest in peace.
Yeah, I think Job is up so much on card count at this point that he can actually be kind of inefficient trading off resources with Devyn because he has such an edge with them. We have a Jace still in play, an Ancestral that's ticking down, so all Job really has to concern himself with is protecting his Jace and protecting his life total. He can actually 2-for-1 himself a couple of times here just protecting his life total.
Shardless Agent is excellent at letting you play that attrition war.
Yeah.
I recall when discussing Shardless Agent with Jerry Thompson at one point, he basically called it Geist of Saint Draft. It's like, yeah, it doesn't attack them with the Angel token, but it actually blocks way better than Geist.
Yeah.
Plays a reasonable amount of defense and very similar in its offensive capacity.
So Rest in Peace hits the table for Devyn. That's going to turn that Tarmogoyf down to a 0-1.
And here Devyn goes, attacking.
And Strix will trade with the Germ.
Yep. Devyn settling in at this point.
Devyn falls to 12 and adds Thalia. I mean, Jonathan possibly contemplating a Dismember in response, but he'll just let it go. And is Job finally ready to clear out the remains of Devyn's army here and start attacking?
He's getting close. I mean, he does only have the agents for offense, but they're pretty good in this spot. And if he can just kill that Thalia either by bouncing it or Golgari Charming, he'd be fine. And it looks like he's going to brainstorm with Jace first. That'll help him, dig to a fetch land, set up that Ancestral Visions, make sure it's real spicy.
Yep.
He can also Wasteland Karakas here to prevent Devyn from being able to go Thalia Karakas for some blocking. Should Jonathan actually be able to deploy a creature with larger than 2 toughness or get rid of the Rest in Peace. But I don't think that's that big a deal.
Yeah, it's also often a dodgy proposition to be wastelanding against Death and Taxes anyway. You see Golgari Charm here is going to take out the Rest in Peace.
Yep. The destroy target enchantment mode of Golgari Charm. The Golgari Charm goes to the graveyard. The Rest in Peace is RFG'd for those curious.
And the reason that I'm not a huge fan of wastelanding the Karakas in a lot of spots is just the Death and Taxes deck plays so many of them that, unlike most decks that just have one Karakas kind of for value, the Death and Taxes deck is very built around Karakas. I would actually be more inclined to stab it off on the Horizon Canopy, I think, if I wanted to use the Wasteland.
Yeah, if you were going to make this specific play, I think either on the Canopy is fine, or you would want to Wasteland the Karakas right before you attacked, so that he has to use it then, which obviously he wouldn't do, because then the Thalia can no longer defend.
Right.
And that way you buy an extra bit of damage and prevent your opponent from maximizing a second Karakas.
Ancestral Vision's looming, about to fire off the next turn.
Because that was really necessary. Ancestral Visions will put a sorcery in the graveyard, and that'll upgrade Tarmogoyf to 4/5. And the Misty Rainforest can make him as large as 5/6. So just a turn removed from Rest in Peace, we see Tarmogoyf still getting quite big.
Another point from Horizon Canopy. These points are really adding up. Devyn going to tend to resolve a Flicker Wisp. Targets the Batter Skull.
Yeah, not a lot Jonathan can do about that, although he's probably just going to wind up dismembering the token in the end step.
Again, he's in a spot now where he's so far ahead on total cards that he can be inefficient and close this game out. Job contemplating his response here. Perhaps thinking about his Dismember in hand.
Wasteland on the Karakas now.
Brainstorm.
Are we... I think we're short a mana on that.
No, we tapped 2.
Oh, we tapped 2? Okay. Goes ahead and pumps the Tarmogoyf for the Wasteland and the Karakas, really. They share it.
Yeah. Not that big of a fan of casting the casting the Brainstorm here, as you're about to look at 3 fresh cards from the Ancestral, so you're kind of just resetting the stuff that you've already seen.
You only really want to bother doing it if you're planning to crack that Misty in the end step. But even then, I would probably rather draw with the Ancestral first and then Brainstorm to maximize the Brainstorm.
So I believe there's a judge call. I believe Joe attacked the last turn with a Starless Agent that was summoning 6, so I would imagine that he's receiving a warning. But game stated, too far gone to back up.
Yeah. We did go ahead and alert our director, and he relayed that to the spotter.
And as Joe looks like he's going to be using Unsummon, I would assume on the Germ, which he is.
No dismember necessary, can still hold on to that. He hasn't even shown Devyn that he has it, so there's value in that.
Adds 4. I think we're about to pay full market value for a dismember.
Removing the Thalia to prevent future trades.
Yeah, I would just get rid of the first striker here. I like this.
Yeah. If we were going to do this, though, I think we should have probably done it last turn, right? Because we had the option then as well.
It's a good advancement of his board. Last turn, and now we're doing a quick price check on the Tarmogoyf.
Price check is 5-6, and that means Devyn has to block. He's going to concede. I guess he doesn't have to block. He found another way.
Only 9.5 minutes left on the clock. More than enough time for Devyn. Not that much time for Joe.
I don't know. I think they can both play that kind of game. Jonathan can get a very fast start. He can have quick Tarmogoyf just beating his opponent up, assuming he dodges Rest in Peace and Relic. I think I agree with you that Jonathan's probably less likely to actually be able to kill in 6 turns or so.
It's just tough with Devyn's defensive measures and the plows. And it's just a lot to get through.
I think Jonathan can win like a game 1 situation in this amount of time pretty regularly. Game 2 with Rest in Peace, Relic of Progenitus, that kind of thing getting in the way. Definitely going to elongate things. But that's true of sideboarding games in general, I think. I think most sideboarding games are longer than game 1.
Yeah, most people are bringing in powerful reactive cards.
Yeah.
When that's the case, it also incentivizes a lot of people to cut their most aggressive cards because the game's going to go longer. And it's sort of a feedback loop that causes games to go much more slowly than they do in game 1s. I know, for example, mono red mirrors often go from being blisteringly fast in game 1 to super slow in post-board games.
Yeah.
As people cut their pups for removal spells.
Or Dragon's Claws, depending on your era. Yeah, that's certainly the case. In fact, I know Brad Nelson, one of his favorite sideboarding strategies in the past has actually been to frequently cut a land in sideboarded games, or on the logic that the games are going to go pretty long anyway, the decks are slightly more powerful, I'd rather not flood.
Yep. I definitely, in post-board games on the draw, I'm inclined to side out a land pretty often.
Yeah.
On the play, much less so.
Yeah, a stumble is pretty punished in a lot of those situations. As we said, powerful cards in sideboarding means your opponent can also have pretty powerful starts and certainly throttle you very quickly. Looks like Devyn, I think he has another landlight hand, 1 or 2 lands.
He kept, and so has Job.
Looked like Port Caracas. Yeah, that's exactly what he's got. Devyn starts with the Port, keeping his white source safe.
But if you're Job, you got to be happy to see that start.
Yep.
At least white mana light and no Vial on turn 1.
Yeah, no Vial on turn 1. He knows if he has a Death Threat Shaman, it would get to live to at least make Devyn kill it on his own turn. But instead, he has Ancestral Visions on turn 1, which is the second best Ancestral Visions this deck is capable of.
I like the one on the house myself.
Yeah, the one on the house is a lot better. Devyn drops Stoneforge Mystic. Certainly a card capable of allowing him to end this game in the 5 minutes he has. Interesting that he searches for Jitte. Does he actually have the Batterskull already?
Possibly. That's a strong implication because against the Abrupt Decay deck, I would want to be going for... Yes, he already has the Batterskull.
We see he has the Batterskull. He also has a Wasteland. This could get one-sided real fast.
I mean, Job has his own Wasteland. He can, possibly assume that Devyn doesn't have another white source of mana. Again, he led with the port. He's played Caracas on 2. The story lines up that there's not another white source of mana in that hand.
Yeah.
And if he doesn't find an answer to the Stoneforge Mystic, I wouldn't be surprised to see him just wasteland the Caracas and cross his fingers.
Yeah, I actually think he has to. I think the story lines up. It seems very, very likely that Devyn kept Port Caracas as the only lands in his opening hand based on this particular lead out. Potentially has a wasteland. The downside, of course, is that lands that make white mana are a pretty common card in Devyn's deck. He
the
has
most common one, in fact.
Yeah, 14? Yeah, he has 14, so he'll have 13 outs to rectify the situation. And Jonathan declines to wasteland. He gets wasted for his own trouble, and now he'll be facing a Batterskull, far behind on the board already. Not where he wants to be.
Yeah, that was a really, really rough turn for Job there. Playing in this Creeping Tar Pit there instead of the wasteland is, that's a concession to him trying to get Charlotte's Legion in play and try to power through the Stoneforge that turn. And wasteland just really devastating.
It's one of the tensions in the Shardless Bug deck, having access to something like wasteland, but also being so reliant on 3 and 4 mana spells.
Yes.
I think we might have seen a very different game transpire here if that wasteland had come down for Jonathan on turn 2 instead of Devyn getting to do it on turn 3. Instead, it's going to become one-sided real fast from the looks of it. Jonathan brainstorming for help, finds a Vision, another Agent, and a Tarmogoyf. None of those especially useful.
Yeah, and I mean, between Batterskull and Rashad and Port, Devyn can just play that game. He doesn't need to do anything else.
Yep.
Just attacking with Stoneforge Mystic, and the Batterskull is a 4-turn clock, and he has some more mana denial at the ready.
Yeah, if Jonathan lands at the defensive measure of Tarmogoyf, he can just drop Rest in Peace to immediately kill it.
We'll see if Job wants to take this opportunity to wasteland, and he declines.
Devyn draws an Aether Vial. I don't think he has a third land, though, so that means he's probably not going to cast it. He's likely to just attack here and port down Jonathan, who is representing a little bit of color screw himself, having played the Wasteland with Tropical Island out in a deck that we all know runs him to Torok and Liliana the Veil.
Yeah. We'll see if he wants to port, if he wants to add something to his board. And in turn, he's going to wasteland the Caracas.
Oh, what could have been.
It's a tough call to make. Obviously, we're working with much better information than Job
Yeah,
has.
we're psychics. Omniscient creatures.
The line that he took, given the way that Devyn's hand was structured, worked out very poorly for him. And he's just so behind the 8-ball here. Fortunately, if you're in Job's seat, there's a real possibility your opponent doesn't have that much, he won't be able to cast spells for the rest of the game, right?
Yeah.
If he doesn't find white mana.
If he bricks on white mana for, I think probably 3 turns is enough to give it over to Jonathan. He's got a lot of lands in his hand. His Visions is about to go off. If he can just kill that Batterskull, buy himself some time while Devyn has to work to find lands to pick it back up, I think that's going to be enough.
Yes. But there's a lot of threatening cards looming in Devyn's hand. He now has Vial to free up some of his action. And we know Rest in Peace is also in his hand. And if Job's going to be leaning on Tarmogoyf to provide a defense, then that could also work out very poorly. So Job starting to get his head above water a little bit, but there's still a lot of work left to be done.
He's going to spin the wheel with Shardless Agent now. He could go for Baleful Strix, but decides not to. Finds a Deathrite Shaman.
Also very nice for Job. Again, he's going to have to get into a spot soon where he's chaining multiple spells together in a turn.
He's going to need to dodge a very important white source from Devyn here, as Rest in Peace will put him behind.
There's the Plains.
Ooh, Plains. There's the Rest in Peace. That turns off the Deathrite Shaman, basically kills the Tarmogoyf for now, and puts Jonathan in the unenviable position of soon chump blocking a Batterskull.
We're in turn 0 right now.
That will likely mean that Jonathan can force a draw.
Yeah, I would imagine that's where we're going to now. Although, we do know that Mother of Runes is in Devyn's hand, so there's some risk of him being able to use Mother of Runes to push through that Germ token. It's unlikely, but there is a risk of that. Job needs to protect himself from that.
Devyn has only 2 attack steps, so just getting Batterskull in twice is not going to be enough unless Jonathan fetches. Or Thought Seizes or something similar, which, to be fair, that's a very real thing that could happen.
There's a fetch land.
There's a fetch land. That's step 1. It's getting dangerous out there.
The plot thickens.
Now, interestingly, if he plays Baleful Strix, Mother of Runes actually can't get the Germ token through all of those blockers. Despite all being gold,
There's a spread.
Each of them is a different set of gold.
There's a Bayou guy, a Trop guy, and an Underground Sea guy.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
you have them all covered.
So the Mother of Runes is not going to guarantee a Batterskull hit, assuming Jonathan does in fact play Baleful Strix, which is likely going to be one of the stranger ways that this particular creature combo has managed to survive in a game.
Well, we come this far. I had to imagine we're Strixing now.
Yeah. No, we
Oh.
can't. Oh, the recipe's is gone. Haha,
Right.
I'm just silly.
Another death right.
Well, now
There's some risk. Now
Yeah.
there's some real risk now.
We've got Vile Mom. Now we can name Pro Green to get through these creatures, and if we draw another Mom, could actually just get through for lethal on the next turn, assuming Jonathan bricks completely.
Batterskull across, Job falls to 4.
Actually, if Devyn finds a third land, he can also snag this one with Flicker Wisp on the Baleful Strix.
So Job is actually now in some risk. Is that a Abrupt Decay just drew? So
that
now
takes all the fun out of it. Now we've got a locked draw for Jonathan.
he can Abrupt Decay and activate his Deathrite Shaman and gain a little life that way.
Yeah.
Plays a Deathrite. Abrupt Decays.
The
Germ token.
Seems like the safest recourse.
So if you're trying to leave and come back, don't go out through the main
Joe
office.
passes.
You're going to want to go out of the room to the left and go down to the west entrance. That's where you guys need to
Revoker
leave.
will name
If you wanna
Deathrite
come back.
Shaman.
If you were leaving and not coming
And this
back,
is Devyn's
you can
last
go out
turn.
that way, but they're not going to let you back into those main doors.
There's a Thalia.
He does not have a way to get through here. He can get in for 2 with his Phyrexian Revoker via Mother of Runes, and that's about it. Honestly, it's even debatable which player is winning this game right now.
Yeah, it's up in the air in my mind.
I think Devyn's ahead, but Jonathan has the tools to recover and survive for a few turns.
Yeah, if I was forced to wager on it, I would take Job as the winner of this game. But who knows? I mean, there's so many more draw steps to go.
Yeah.
Job draws. Can't do lethal, and there's a draw.
Yep.
So Jonathan, Job, and Devyn March take an unintentional draw there due to time, moving to 5-1-1.